Hello. I have just this afternoon finally finished reading the final book I have to get to from this year's Booker Prize shortlist. And I purposely saved one of these titles till towards the end of the award season because the winner is being announced so much later in the year than it normally is. And if you're wondering why that is, it's because the prize ceremony is being held at a venue that they hadn't had it in before. And this was the only date that was available. But the winner is finally going to be announced this Sunday on the evening of November 26th. It's going to be live broadcast online, and I've been lucky enough to have been invited to the actual ceremony, so I can't wait to see who's going to be declared the winner. But now that I have finally finished reading all 6 novels on the shortlist, I'm ready to make my prediction for who I think is going to win this year's award. And I just placed a monetary bet on that. So I have an actual financial stake in who wins this year's award. But that's just a silly side thing. It's not really about that. It's more, and I always say this about book prizes, it's always about the pleasure of reading the books, discovering titles that I probably wouldn't have read otherwise, and giving more concentrated effort and taking more time to really try to understand certain books than I normally would. And as I've talked about recently, one of these books I was prepared not to read, but because of all the encouragement of other readers and the discussion about it online, I went back and finished reading it, and I'm so glad I did. And I think picking a winner is going to be really difficult because actually I think all 6 of these books have great qualities to them, are really excellent in their own way, and they're very different kinds of books. So it's going to be really difficult for the judges to decide, I think. But I am going to go through, make my predictions in order of preference, and you can make a good assumption. You have a 50% chance if you say Paul is going to win this year's award, since 3 of the authors are actually named Paul. And just for fun, I want to look at the actual Bookies statistics. I have real trouble saying that. What? Oh my gosh, why can't I say that word? Statistics. Anyway, here is the bookie selections of what they think is going to win, the percentage of probability. And and actually the Pauls are all in the top spot. And so yeah, it's really difficult to decide. And but what do bookies really know? I mean, I'm guessing that they haven't actually read these books, and so are just ordering the titles based on what authors have published previously and award attention that they've got before, and the popularity and reputation of the authors. But now I'm going to go through and give my ranking because I have read all of the books. I would love to know what your ranking is, who you think is going to win this year's award. Please let me know about that in the comments below. But for me, I think probably my least favorite out of all of the books, I'm sad to say, is If I Survive You by Jonathan Escoffery, which I really enjoyed this book. It's so inventive and clever how it tells this family story in these different stories and sections, and how it moves forwards and backwards in time and moves between perspectives. It's really, really strong. But I would say there are some sections which aren't as good as others. And so that's why it would fall into the bottom for me. Next, I would probably say This Other Eden, which I just finished reading. It was excellent. There is so much such a great poetic quality to this narrative, and it just kind of flows along, telling this family story on an island, the residents of a small island, focusing on one boy in particular who has great artistic talent, and the how the government forcibly removed all of the residents from this small island off the coast of Maine, and how this is based on a real life story and is a scandalous part of Maine and America's history. And following this multi biracial cast. It's so unique and really fascinating. But yeah, I probably would place it like next in the list. Then I would say Study for Obedience by Sarah Bernstein, even though I initially abandoned this book and went back to it and appreciated it so much more. The readability factor of this, I say, is not all that high. I still didn't enjoy reading this book, but I did find it a really valuable experience. It's such a fascinating, different perspective than any other writer is giving us at the moment, and the way it looks at like community history and the meaning of communities and how discrimination works, and the focuses on a very different kind of personality. But yeah, I would rank it third from last. Then I would probably say Prophet Son by Paul Lynch. I thought this novel was so powerful and a depiction of a collapse of and totalitarian control of a society, and the way it focuses this through a particular individual who has so much going on in her life that the way it is rapidly collapsing around her is just disastrous and terrifying to follow, but also so gripping and really insightful about the process of how this occurs, how this can occur in a community and in a society. So I thought this was incredible. Then I would probably say it's really difficult, but I would next order The Beasting by Paul Murray, which is such a monumental story, really epic family story, focusing on the different perspectives of 4 different family members over a relatively short period of time as they're all going through different crises, as they all have different secrets. It is so thrilling, so plot-driven. I was gripped throughout the entire story, and increasingly so till towards the end of this book, which it ends in such a fascinating way. And I had so much great discussion about the ending of this book. Really interesting. And that means my favorite to win would be Western Lane by Chetna Maroo. And I'm still calling this the little book that could. And it's not little in the scope of its meaning or the artfulness of its storytelling, but because it's quite a short book, but also a very humble story. I think it's a very quiet story. It's a very intense family story about a girl who just wants to win a regional squash competition. So it's very like humble in that way, but how it follows her and her family's process of grief and the way they don't discuss certain things, I think is so powerful and resonant and unlike anything I've read before, that I think it's truly unique and really haunting and powerful, that even though this was the first book I read out of any of these books on the shortlist, but it's the one that's stayed with me the longest and still lingers in the back of my mind, and I keep thinking about it. And I think that's always a great sign in a novel. And, you know, maybe that'll be the case with some of these other books. I still want to discuss and think about and talk about all of these other titles. But yeah, I think that's my favorite. So yes, I've placed my actual bet on it. So if it wins, I will be in the money, but I will also be rooting for Chetna Maroo, just because it'd be wonderful to see a debut novel win. It would be wonderful to see a female author win the prize. Not that that's what it's about. That says nothing about the quality of the books. It has nothing to do, you know, with the actual content of them. But it's been quite a few years since Bernardine Evaristo and Margaret Atwood jointly won the prize. And so yeah, it would be great to see a female author win the prize again, but also a debut novelist. And I think a really special and spectacular new voice in fiction. So that is my opinion. Let me know if you agree or disagree. What would your ranking of the books be if you've read them all? Are you curious to read any of these books still? And I would really encourage you to read all of these books, because like I said, I think they're all excellent in their own way. And I would also encourage you to read some other books from the long list, which didn't make the short list, which I also loved reading. So The House of Doors had such a wonderful discussion with my online book group about this novel, and also In Ascension is an incredible, wondrous novel that I had read before the list even came out, and I loved it so much. It's such an incredible book. And I'm currently reading Sebastian Barry's novel. I've been meaning to get to this book, but hadn't prioritized it. And his writing is so good, and really complex, interesting story that I'm interested to see how it's going to play out. So those are my thoughts on the short list. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Let me know if you're going to be watching the awards ceremony, and let's see who actually wins on this Sunday. Okay, thank you for watching. I'll speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.